Is age a legitimate issue?
It is a legitimate issue. Sure it is. And I think people are going to judge it. If I were to run, I think they're going to judge me on my vitality. Can I still run up the steps of Air Force Two? Am I still in good shape? Do I have all my faculties? Am I energetic? I think it's totally legitimate for people to ask those questions.
But Democrats worry about the age issue already looming over President Biden's re-election bid. 76% of voters have major or moderate concerns about Biden not having the mental and physical health for a second term. That includes more than half of Democrats.
It also talks about how President Biden could present himself to a jury as a, quote, sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
President Biden spending the weekend here at his home while we expect his surrogates will start doing that damage control, fanning out and characterizing the special counsel as a political opportunist.
That's our task between now and November on the campaign side, to remind the American public, number one, not only is he fit to do the job, he's doing a hell of a damn job, right? If he was weak, he wouldn't have been able to rally our allies to support Ukraine against Putin's aggression, right? He wouldn't have driven the economy to such great success.
Where do you stand today? Is Joe Biden the right person to represent your party in 2024?
You know, it's funny. I hear a lot of people asking me about his age. And as a Native person, I really have a tremendous amount of respect for elders. I think that Joe Biden's mental acuity is very, very on. He's one of the smartest, sharpest people I've met in D.C.
Actually, Joe Biden at his age is he has a big vision for our country. He brings the wisdom, the knowledge, the judgment of age, as well as experience. He knows how to get things done. He's a legislator, not a person to hold things up. And he has a big heart of empathy for the American people.
Because just this past week alone, the president, in public remarks, mixed up the leaders of France, Germany, and he referred to Egypt as Mexico. Does the president have any memory problems?
He does not. This is a report that went off the rails. It's a shabby work product. Let's take a step back. It starts with a legal conclusion that was foregone from the very beginning. The investigation could have been concluded in 2 or 3 months. It went on for over 15 months. And so along with the legal conclusion comes this flood of characterizations, factual misstatements, pejorative comments about the president that are inconsistent with DOJ policy and norms, and that, as you see, over the last 48 hours have been widely criticized by legal experts. This is not what prosecutors do. It is shoddy work product.
And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game. And as Secretary Mayorkas said a minute ago, when you go in to brief the president, you better have your big boy pants on. And this kind of sense that he's not ready for this job is just a bucket of BS that's so deep, your boots will get stuck in.
Yeah. I tried to catch up with Tammy Baldwin, a senator from Wisconsin who's up for re-election in a battleground state, and she literally said to me, I don't want to talk about this story.
Hey, hold on. Before you go on, we have that quote there, Tammy Baldwin. This isn't a story I really want to talk about. Senator John Tester, who's the Montana Democrat, up for re-election, both of them vulnerable Democrats. I really haven't had a chance to read the report. When I get a chance, I'll read it.
You just acknowledge a failure to communicate on a very important issue in regard to Palestinian lives. Is there a problem here?
There's not a problem. This president is going to be able to sell a record that is extraordinary.
So there's no evidence here that he was intentionally holding on or had any intent to disclose this information, beyond the immediate realm that he held. And that is a significant distinction.
But there were some documents they were marked classified. He noted that when he was speaking to the ghostwriter. And it does say that some of them were related to human sources, which is obviously some of the most sensitive intelligence. And I know that you care about that because you talked about it when Trump was, reported on talking about a document. You talked about the concern of it putting the women and men of the intelligence community in danger.
Absolutely. And that is a very significant concern.
Then made gratuitous, unnecessary, and inaccurate personal remarks, and those are improper. The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing and detail-oriented and focused.
More than a dozen Republican lawmakers are now calling for the 25th Amendment to be invoked. Just to give our viewers a sense of what that means, it basically would mean the cabinet would have the authority to start the process of trying to remove the president if he or she is deemed incapable of serving. What is your reaction to those calls? Has that ever been discussed?
Kristen, I don't engage in politics. I'm responsible for governing and following the president's agenda.
This was a special counsel that was appointed by the Biden administration. I wonder how you can ask people to have faith in the Justice Department investigating Donald Trump and not investigating Biden.
The Justice Department acts with unflinching integrity, and the Attorney General of the United States personifies that every single day, as do the career prosecutors and everyone in the Department of Justice. This special counsel report is an unfortunate deviation from the norms that guide the Department of Justice throughout its history.
But this was not just one moment in the 12-minute press conference. I mean, take a look at what we saw just recently, a handful of other events. Take a look, a few more.
There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas. I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from from France looked at me.
I mean, you know, Mitterrand, whether it's from Germany or France, obviously he's from France, but he's been dead for 25 years. I mean, there are a number of these incidents, and they may be gassed. We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But this is what the American public is seeing, and it's raised concerns. Our poll shows over 80% responding, saying that they think that Biden is too old to serve as president again.
And Jonathan, if press coverage focuses relentlessly on things that don't represent Joe Biden's real body of work, you can push towards that kind of result. That poll should have been about who's actually working to secure our border. Joe Biden, who's worked across the aisle for months with a bipartisan group in the Senate, or Donald Trump, who is willfully killing the bipartisan border deal in the Senate, not because he wants to secure America, but to secure his own reelection. What that poll could have been about is who understands that our alliances keep us safer. Joe Biden, who's led 50 countries to come to the defense of Ukraine, or Donald Trump, who alarmingly last night bragged about a story where he claims he threatened a NATO ally to throw them to the Russian wolves if they didn't pay up. NATO isn't a protection racket, but it is a security alliance. So the substance, the difference, Joe Biden and Donald Trump and most elected officials make small gaffes just like the ones you just showed. That's not what matters. We are in a fight for the soul of our nation, and the idea that somehow Joe Biden forgot the date of his son's death is offensive and appalling. And what you should be focused on, in my view, what that poll should have focused on, what our nation should focus on,
can I stop
is
you
the
for a
ways
second, though,
that
because
Donald Trump is undermining rule of law, democracy, and our safety as a nation.
But we do have polling on the issues you're discussing, and the polling shows widespread disapproval of how President Biden has handled the border and also the foreign policy. I mean, despite what you're saying.
Let's take that border issue, okay? After months of coverage about, disaster at the border.
Because the president takes classified information seriously. He always has. He did not intentionally take classified documents. The special counsel decided that there was no case there. Notably, he said this would be true whether President Biden was president or a private citizen. The special counsel's assignment when he was appointed was to determine whether any criminal conduct occurred. He found it didn't. That was the finding. The case is closed.
Why should the American public accept the conclusion that charges weren't warranted?
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking.
I'm saying you're claiming that much of the report is inaccurate. So why are you so confident that the conclusion is correct?
The conclusion has been obvious from the very beginning. It was a long, intensive, sort of meandering investigation that came to the conclusion that in February of last year, everybody knew that this wasn't intentional, that this was an accident, that they were found, and as soon as they were found, the president said, give them back, get them back as soon as we can, and fully cooperate with everything. So he reached the inevitable conclusion because it's the truth. The conduct of the investigation throughout and the gratuitous comments in the report are troubling and they're inappropriate. But I think that the finding was the obvious one because it's the truth.
President Biden blamed his staff largely for the mishandling of documents and where they ultimately ended up. Does the president believe he did everything right when it comes to handling classified material?
Well, just look at the report. I know it's long, but the report talks about how the evidence is that these were most likely things that were packed up by staff during movements and transitions and things of that nature. So that's reflected by the report. It's not some accusation by the president. It's just true. I mean, you guys know, you guys work with White House staff all the time. We support the principal. That's our job. And principal relies on their staff to help them with things. And the president said this last night. You know, he talked about how, you know, looking back, if he had been more he wished to be more engaged in that process of the packing and the moving things to make sure that things were being done the right way. I'll have more on that soon.
In 2017, that he had classified material downstairs. He boasted about it.
What is the issue with memory, and is it a factor that deals with his capacity to serve?
Well, I have a lot of issues with the contents of that question, and Kareen's answered a lot about the president's transparency in his medical records and his physical and things of that nature. And I, leave that to Kareen to handle. But I'll say, I just read you this. Page 248, later in the report, he says, quote, "We expect the evidence of Mr. Biden's state of mind to be compelling," pointing to him providing, quote, "clear and, quote, forceful testimony." I can't explain why the report veers all over the place on this issue. I can just say, and as you've heard from the vice president, you heard from members of Congress yesterday talking about their recent interactions with the president. One, Congressman Goldman from New York, talking about his interaction with the president the day before this interview when Congressman Goldman was on the ground in Israel, and the long and intensive and detailed conversation they had about what was going on the ground. We just reject that this is true.
Just finally, does the president support the release of the entire transcript of his interview to put to rest some of these things that you think are being overlooked?
It's a reasonable question. I think that it's important to know that we're dealing with classified materials in this conversation. There are classification issues there. I don't have any announcement on, releasing anything today, but it's a reasonable question, and there are classified stuff, and we'll have to work through all that.
So, but once you can work through, like, say, a redacted version, would the president support the release as long as you can obviously keep what needs to be kept secret?
Well, we'll take a look at that and make a determination. The report lays out how the president did not share classified documents with anyone. The report lays out how the president did not knowingly share classified information with anyone.
So he's entitled to say he didn't do it. He can defend himself. But he also said the special counsel didn't say that he did share that classified info with the ghostwriter. Except, John, the special counsel did say that explicitly. Her wrote, quote, "Mr. Biden shared information, including some classified information from those notebooks with his ghostwriters."
They have made up claims of a two-tiered system of justice between Republicans and Democrats. They have denigrated the rule of law for political purposes. That reality creates a ton of pressure. And in that pressurized political environment, when the inevitable conclusion is that the facts and the evidence don't support any charges, you're left to wonder why this report spends time making gratuitous and inappropriate criticisms of the president.
Does that mean that possible memory lapses happened because he was so distracted by what was happening overseas, or do you dispute that he had any memory issues during those hours of interviews?
I dispute that the characterizations about his memory that were in the report are accurate because they're not. And I think the president spoke very clearly about how his mind was on other things.
But you're not a lawyer, correct?
That's correct. Okay. I'm a spokesperson.
Okay. Any chance that we'll get the White House counsel to come out here and answer questions directly?
Should I be offended by that? I mean, I
get offended all the time.
I know. I mean, what? I mean, come on.
You did say something that was factually incorrect. There has been a previous special counsel.
John, finish your question, please.
I was asked to come today by your colleagues in the press corps, and we happily obliged. I think the public is smart, and I think that they can see what's going on. I think that they see a president who fully cooperated. I think they see a president who did the right thing and made sure everything got back. And I think that they see that this was a long investigation that ended without a case to be made. And, I think that they can see and understand, when people are gratuitous and make comments that they shouldn't make, and that are beyond the remit of a prosecutor to do, I think that they understand that, and I think that they'll understand that the president did the right thing here.
By saying that this is politically motivated, not just gratuitous, but politically motivated, does this not also sow distrust with the public?
I reject that. I reject that question. You see this, and it's in the report, the letter that the president's lawyer and the White House counsel's office sent to the special counsel to talk about the Department of Justice norms and policies that they see as being violated by some of the comments and remarks made in the report. And so, I think that that's a false equivalence kind of question, because what we have argued and what we continue to say and believe is that you're not supposed to make these sorts of things according to Justice Department policy. The president, when he ran, and you guys all know this because you heard this, talked about how important it was to restore the rule of law. And he understands that.
Anything specifically on why you're not doing the Super Bowl interview? I mean, that's a massive audience in an election year of people who may not be tuned into this White House or this election at this moment.
So look, as you know, Super Bowl is a great annual tradition. Look, the president Biden looks forward to watching the game this Sunday, just like millions of, as you just stated, just like millions of Americans are going to be doing that. And look, we hope that the viewers who tuned in, we know that the viewers who tuned in, they tuned in to watch the game, right? And so obviously, that is just a fact. They want to see the game. They want to see their favorite team. They want to see a halftime show. That is what it's that type of tradition. The president will find many other ways to communicate with Americans, the millions of Americans out there, and we will find those ways to do it where we think the time is right.
I want to ask you about layoffs. So UPS is cutting 12,000 jobs. Wayfair is cutting 13% of their workforce. Macy's, Amazon, Google, Citibank, Blackstone, they're all announced layoffs. The president talks about how he's added back all the jobs lost in the pandemic and created 5.4 million jobs. What's the level of concern that 2024 will be that wave of layoffs that we're going to start to see?
So look, I'm certainly not going to speak to every company that you just named, but if you look at, and you just stated, if you look at under this, obviously he takes that very seriously, any layoff, right? He understands what that means to a family and how that could affect a family. But the president has also done a lot of work to get this economy going again.
The New York Federal Reserve just released a report today saying that Americans have $1.13 trillion in credit card debt, which is now another record. Is there an affordability crisis?
So, look, what we have been seeing, as you know from the data has been very clear here, that wages are going up, consumers are spending a lot more, and it's important. Wages are meeting inflation, that's important, and obviously inflation has gone down. And I think that's important as well. You got to look at the holistic components of the data, and I think that tells you a story of where we are as an economy.
Talk a lot, including today, about how the border wouldn't be such a big deal if Congress would have just passed your immigration bill on day one. Who was in charge of Congress on day one?
So it's been 3 years. It's been three whole years, more than 3 years. More than 1,000 days. And look, this is a difficult issue, obviously. This is a difficult issue. And what we have said is that Congress has to act, right? Congress, Democrats, Republicans have to act. But in those 3 years, it is true that Republicans have gotten in the way. They just have, Peter. They have consistently used immigration, the immigration system, the broken system, as a political stunt. That's what they've done.
How is President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you,
Why?
sir.
What is
We're
the
going to
rabbit
go.
hole?
Go ahead.
He said
go
he
ahead.
talked to Mitterrand.
Go ahead. You saw the president in Vegas, in California. You've seen the president in South Carolina. You saw him in Michigan. I'll just leave it there.
You've downplayed concerns about the president's memories in situations where he's mixed up certain things. You've said it happens and it's common. But yesterday we saw the president again have a mix-up with the president of Egypt, with the president of Mexico. So how do you explain that? Is it not valid that voters would have these concerns?
Look, what I would say is this. That this is a president that has had relationship with world leaders for more than 40 years. He has. And at times, and I even said this yesterday, has he misspoken, as many of us do? I've laid out some examples of even Speaker Johnson just on TV, on Meet the Press on Sunday, who said he supports Iran when he meant to say he supports Israel. It happens. It truly, truly happens. When you have a president that has been one of the most productive, if not the most productive and effective presidents in modern time, that you would assume is a president that is indeed in touch with where the American people are, right? That would assume that the president understands what's going on around the kitchen table when Americans are sitting around the kitchen table trying to figure out how are they going to deal with the economy? How are they going to deal with health care? So in our opinion, in my opinion, he is very much in touch with what Americans are feeling out there as it relates to lowering costs, as it relates to making sure that we beat Big Pharma. This isn't the president who understands what the American people are feeling. Look, as it relates to his age, as it relates to what has been said in this report, it is something that we don't believe lives in reality in the sense of this is a president. I've known this president since 2009. I've known this president. He's been not just my boss, but a mentor to me. And no one in this building would say that what we saw in this report about his memory. Everybody sees somebody who works very, very hard, has spent hours with him, understanding exactly where the American people are and what they're feeling, and also how to deliver on those critical, important issues to them.
If the special counsel says President Biden's got significant limitations on his memory, then who is helping him run the country?
The President of the United States runs the country. The Commander-in-Chief runs the country.
Does the president not believe that many voters have this concern about his age?
I mean, the president's talked about it. He's joked about his age, right? He has joked about his age, understanding what voters might think. He has. He's done that pretty often. I think I think the other thing that we want to make sure that you all understand is that this is a president that also has delivered for the American people. That is a fact. I mean, look, you saw, your colleagues were, I think, were you in the room, Tyler, yesterday? Your colleagues and yourself were able to see the president and ask questions yesterday. He did that, I believe, if not the day before yesterday, he did that a couple of times this week, I think about 3 times, engaging with the press. It's just something that he does pretty often. And we're going to try and obviously pick moments. He's going to, on his own, have moments where he's going to want to walk over and talk to all of you, as he's done many times before. We're going to continue, obviously, to your question, yes, we're going to find many different ways to engage with the press. That's something that we think is very important. It's important to take your questions. It's important to hear from all of you and hear directly what's on the mind of the American people, as well as what we believe is on the mind of the American people, and take questions. So that's not going to change.
One of the president's Republican presidential rivals, Nikki Haley, has called for a mental competency test for the president. Is that something that the White House is actively considering as a way to try and put to rest some of these allegations about his memory lapses?
I mean, look, I'm not a medical doctor. So certainly I'm not going to stand here and make opine on tests or anything of that nature.
When can we talk to the president's doctor?